What I wanted to talk about today is how either inadvertently, through the liberalization of society, or deliberately, through planned government action, governments have created, using mass psychology, a super powerful shield protecting their reputation. The shield can be referred to by many names. I will call it the conspiracy shield. Now, you may have heard of this one before, how governments perpetuate the ideas of various kooky, crazy conspiracies in order to give them the ability to do nasty things openly without question. But this doesn't stop at crazy and harebrained ideas like Sandy Hook being executed by U.S. government actors, ancient aliens building the pyramids, or clockwork elves working from the sub-transmission zone to subvert society. It has grown to include any crime committed by a person of elite status, unless the broader media apparatus supports the legitimacy of the crime occurring. One recent example is the #MeToo situation. Hollywood has had multiple people come forward for years talking about various sexual abuses, but only when the media started to acknowledge it in the wake of Harvey Weinstein did it become something acknowledged by average normal people. Stories were floating around by people like Terry Crews and Elijah Wood, but were not given credence until the Me Too movement forced them into the light. To anyone who worked in the industry or knew vaguely of it, it was common knowledge that disgusting sleazebags would be sexually abusing men and women constantly. However, it was considered beyond the pale socially to acknowledge. It was considered an open secret. Despite the piles of evidence, it was seen as harebrained or conspiracy-minded to talk about, and people who ranted about it were seen as crazy. Only now will you see average people openly disown Hollywood for the scumfuck hive of villainy that it is. The most heinous modern example of this, however, is most certainly the actions of the Democratic Party during various prospects within the Obama administration and during the 2016 election. But because there was no actual trials or arrests, or no investigative media pressure, society doesn't view any of these crimes as having actually occurred, and anyone who talks about them is seen as talking about a conspiracy. This includes the deeper claims of Pizzagate, but even the mundane things that were talked about openly in a publicly broadcast FBI hearing. This is not to say that the Republican Party is clean of criminal activity, but during the Obama administration, a whole slew of crimes were committed freely in the open. Hillary Clinton plainly lied about her intention of using a private email server that contained innumerable government secrets and plans. The intention is blatantly clear, not to a trained FBI investigator, but to anyone with half a fucking brain. Hillary would have various states and organizations lined up on the docket of the State Department, and mysteriously, Bill Clinton would be paid $250,000 to speak at a keynote held in one of these states by some relevant organization close to the government. Favorable outcomes on a deal or matter were then doled out by Secretary Clinton, a very lucrative business. The details are better covered in Clinton Cash, but are easily searched up with simple searches like Bill Clinton speeches and looking at the treaty actions taken by the State Department's 2009 to 2012. Hilariously, if one navigates to these records on the State Department website, the 2009 to 2012 treaty actions are hidden in the sidebar and not available from the main list, as if they were hastily hidden when this became public concern. People may accept this one as fact as a rather benign claim about political corruption that is categorically common and expected. Then it stands to question, who did Hillary sell or exchange U.S. secrets with for speaking engagements or other money funneling into her Clinton Foundation? If one brings this up to even a rational left-winger, they'll call you a conspiracy nut, despite it being a fairly logical explanation for Hillary's behavior and in line with other behavior of the Clintons over the years. However, this is to be expected. People have tribal affiliations, and if one challenges them, they will react with their gut psychological action. However, even if you convince a Republican or centrist of this rather obvious fact, talking about the serious crimes which have the same level of circumstantial evidence results in them shutting off out of fear or skepticism. For example, if one brings up the variety of court case-related deaths surrounding the Clintons, Seth Rich, the potential ties to child trafficking from Haiti, and its potential motive with John Molesta Podesta, who has graphic, realistic art of children in sexual poses hanging up in his house, a fact he publicly admitted to and flaunted. If one brings this up, not even accusing them of being Satanists or actively harming children, one is immediately dismissed out of hand. Despite the evidence of John Podesta being a disgusting creep being published freely, in an article for a Washington, D.C. magazine. Since we live in an increasingly immoral society, the standard for society truly rejecting a person on instinct gets lower and lower. In order for every normie, far and wide, the things these people would have to be guilty of is actual murder and actual pedophilia. Nothing else really gets the almonds activated for the barely cognizant masses in this liberalized moral mess. So, if one suggests that the elite politicians might be involved in child trafficking and pedophilia, despite people like Jeffrey Epstein actively being ousted and convicted, and then shown to have ties to all the people implicated in creepy emails involving Ubering children to a pool, they are told to put on their tinfoil hat. Now, for a rational person, this wouldn't warrant a witch hunt, but at very least an investigation. Surely, there would be no harm in checking this out, having these people reveal information that clear themselves of such a heinous crime to authorities. Instead, a person dismisses it as a conspiracy, no matter their politics. A good example of this is Joe Rogan. Joe read the same creepy email about Ubering kids to a pool and became skeptical of the moral character of people like John Podesta. I don't know if he was ever shown the creepy art hung in the man's house, but Joe's rational skepticism was soon forgotten. He began to discard conspiracies altogether and toe the normal media celebrity line so he could get better guests and not worry about being seen as a crazy person or a dangerous element. Similarly, even if you can get a normie to have a rational reaction to the piles of circumstantial evidence of wrongdoing, they will forget it, and its implications, because it fundamentally changes the way they must view society. It would have to change the way they interact with broader society and people in light of these new facts. It is this line that cannot be crossed, this line that challenges the broader zeitgeist and one's behavior within it. If one admits that political assassinations are not only possible in today's age, but common and extremely easy with a little police involvement, we're also admitting that many public figures have been privy to or participated in sick child sex rituals. If one admits these facts, despite them being a fairly logical conclusion and being supported by piles of circumstantial evidence, they are thrown out as completely crazy. Not because the evidence isn't damning, or because of political leanings or biases. Instead, it is mass psychology. It is because one cannot simultaneously hold a normal moral standard of disliking murder and pedophilia, while also not wishing to overthrow and overturn society if they admit these facts. This meme of believing that the world has gotten kinder as human rights and liberties have become more commonplace is a self-delusion that benefits no one but the evil who practice openly without fear. It is a shield deliberately created to allow the most deranged to hide in plain sight. They can freely do the unthinkable, because society even considering or thinking about it makes them culpable or party to the crime. So, to avoid this social discomfort, no one applies public pressure to investigate the motherfucker who has art of naked children chained up in an empty pool on his wall. The man involved in a campaign organization that funds a vulnerable children protection agency in Haiti. The guy who was close friends with convicted molester Jeffrey Epstein, known diddler Bill Clinton, and gay diddler and Speaker of the House Danny Hastert. People forget, they forgive, and this nonsense, along with a whole other slew of corruption, is allowed to continue. Because the unthinkable is that we have been paying tax money, voting for, buying the films of, and allowing the rule of murderers and pedophiles. And if that is true, if that is the case, then we are just as guilty for ignoring the obvious truth of it, to hide under the comforting blanket that we live in a society with more advanced morals and individual protections. It would take one of these figures to be recorded actively murdering a child on camera to break the spell, or even justify a simple investigation. For sure, many of the average people would just call it good CGI, never able to accept that they were fooled so thoroughly. Thus, society exists in a state of knowing dozens and dozens of evil things happen that they tacitly fund, support, and accept. Yet never will they admit that these evils truly exist or occur because it would break the illusion. In this way, there is no great need to hide blatant pedophilia or political assassination in the modern day. The public will do it for you out of guilt.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.